Hey everyone, I wanted to take a few minutes and show you how I use Audacity to prepare my audio files for broadcast on DallyPost Radio. Now I've already got Audacity started here, and Audacity is amazing software, and what makes it really amazing is it's free. And it runs on just about any operating system out there. It runs on Windows, it runs on Linux, and I believe it runs on the Mac. So just about anyone can get it and use it to produce high quality audio for DallyPost Radio. So I begin by organizing or gathering the audio files that I'm going to use in my show into a common folder so they're easy to access. Now I've already got Audacity running in this window, so all I have to do is bring my files in. So I go File, Import, Audio, and here you see my folder, Podcast MP3. That's the primary audio for my podcast. So I bring that in. Now I want you to notice something. The levels are very low. The volume isn't going to be there. It's going to be at a whisper. Now we don't want that. We want to have uniformity between all of the different shows that are broadcast on DallyPost Radio so that our listeners aren't always having to adjust the volume. So let's do them a favor and let's do exactly that. So the first thing I do is I click Effect and Normalize. Now on Normalize, I have checked Remove DC Offset, and I check Normalize Maximum Amplitude, and I set it to -1 dB. Click OK. There's my volumes. They're looking pretty good. But the thing is, we have spikes. These are spikes, places where it gets really loud. That's a spike, that's a spike, that's a spike. And we want to be able to control those so that we don't have really loud parts of our audio that's difficult for our listeners to listen to. We use for that the compressor. Now, I would recommend that you use these settings that I'm going to share with you now. They work really well, and they work consistently. Threshold, I set that to -14. That's -14 dB. Noise floor, I set that to -40 dB. Ratio is set at 2:1. Attack time is 0.2 seconds, and release time is 1.0 seconds. Now down here at the bottom we have a couple of little select boxes which we can select, but we don't want to. We leave those unchecked and click OK, and watch what happens to our audio. See, our lower volume audio stayed the same, but look at what happened to our spikes. It shrunk those down so they're not quite so abrasive. Now we can go back into Effect, Normalize one more time, leaving those settings as we had them before. Click OK. Now we've got some good audio. And now listen to this. Following Donald Trump's presidential victory, the White House won't rule out the possibility of extending a presidential pardon to former... Okay, so once I have my levels in pretty good shape and I've got my spikes controlled, then I go through my recording and I'm looking for the things we put in our recordings that we really don't want. For example, we say, these are filler words. They make it difficult for people to listen to us, and they make us sound a little bit dumb. So let's get those things out of there. And there are other things that go on. Here's a perfect example. House Okay, so when these things occur while we're recording, we don't have to stop and start over. We just simply keep recording, clear our throat, do whatever we have to do, and then start again, making a good, clean recording. And so when we find these sections that we don't want, we click on the selection tool. It looks like a large uppercase I. We select the audio that we want to get rid of, and once it's selected, we click the delete key, and it's gone. Suddenly, I sound intelligent. How cool is that? Okay, so here's where, at this point, we have good quality audio, but it's a little boring to listen to. What if we added some intro music? So I come over here, I go File, Import Audio again, And look there, there's my music. So I click on that and open it, and it opens it as a new track. Now, this brought this in as a stereo track. This represents the left and this represents the right. Well, we don't need that in a podcast, and so I click the track I want. You can see I have the mono track up here where we have left and right equal, or I can come down here and click this one. Then I go tracks, stereo to mono, and I have a much easier track to work with. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on mute and just get that out of the way so we don't have to listen to the primary audio for a minute. And I'm going to play the intro music. Okay, let's stop that right there. Let's assume that we want to run that intro music to right there. So with the selection tool selected, I can just click wherever I want. So I click where I want it. Then I go to Edit, Clip Boundaries, and Split. Now this is now broken this mono track into two separate tracks. I can use the Time Shift tool right here, which is a little double arrow pointing left and right. I can click on that part, just push it out of the way for now. Now, one of the things that we have here is we have now an abrupt end to our music. Nah, that's no good. That's no good. So let's do this instead. We can stop and we can select the portion that we want to work with, and now we go Effect, Fade Out. Whoa, look at that. How cool is that? And so now we have a nice, easy fade. Now there's one other way to do this, and I'll just point this out real quick, and sometimes I'll even combine these. There is the envelope tool. That's this tool right here. And when we click on it, it puts a blue line above our above and below our file. And we can click on that. We can pull it down. We can pull it up and down. And that affects the volume for the whole thing. Or we can put points in it. And here you can see I'm still at full volume here, but I can even drag this down further to make it even fade out faster. So anyway, there's a couple ways to do the same thing. And both ways work well. So now if we listen to this, now this fade out and the voiceover I'm going to show you now is the cool things that people do with mixer boards that are expensive, but we won't need one. So I've unmuted my audio track. I click on the Time Shift tool and I move it over here, and now we can play it and you can hear the fade out. Following Donald Trump's presidential victory, the White House, and here we go. And you can adjust that wherever you want it. If I say, oh, I want to wait for a little bit longer before I start talking, I just move it over, and I do. Following Donald Trump's presidential victory, the White House won't rule out the possibility of extending a presidential pardon to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Should this pardon... Okay, now, sometimes we have natural breaks in our podcast, and we might want to insert a little bit of theme music between those as well. Now, we could bring in another file, audio file, but I'm just going to use this same file. I will grab my Time Shift tool, pull it back, and let's start listening here. All right, that'll work. So now I come over here, grab my selection tool, identify the spot, go to Edit, Clip Boundaries, Split, and we'll just get rid of that. So I double click on it to make it highlight. I hit delete and it goes away. Now I come up here on my main track, and this is the natural separation between the two segments. Again, I go Edit, Clip Boundaries, Split, and there's two sections there. Grab my Time Shift tool, move this out of the way. Now normally I would listen to see how much of this music I want to include. I'm just going to grab a piece in the interest of time. So we come over here and we grab that right there. Again, we go Edit, Clip Boundaries, Split, double click on this, press delete. That's gone. Now all we have to do is fade in over here, Effect, fade in, and fade out over here. Effect, fade out, and grab Time Shift, set it where we want it, listen to it, of partisan privilege the world has ever seen. Now here you can see that I had the music actually start after, but if I want it to overlap the audio a little bit, I can do that. Just by moving it over. Pardon occur. We will witness the most abusive example of partisan privilege the world has ever seen. Okay, we stop that, and now we grab the Time Shift tool, grab our last bit of audio, the final segment of our webcast or our radio program, and we listen to that. House Press Secretary Josh Earnest is apparently dumbfounded by the fact that so many voters who supported. Okay, now you can see that we could continue. We could actually add another piece of music here. We could add a number of different things. It's just we can mix and match audio clips any way we want. We can bring in new audio and we can stack a ton of different tracks. And by the way, it's easy to work with multiple tracks because once you get a track the way you want it, you're not going to edit that anymore. Just minimize it. And so you can minimize and maximize and work with these different tracks as you go until you put together your final piece. Now, the last thing we have to do is save our file. Now, we don't go File, Save. We go File, Export Audio. Oh, one final step. Before we do anything, or before we save anything, and the last step that we always do is we make sure that we don't have anything selected. So just do a single click somewhere to make sure we don't have a block of audio selected, and we go Effect, Normalize one more time, because some of these effects that we've done will increase or decrease volume a little bit. So Effect Normalize gets us right back where we need to be so that the audio levels on your program will match the audio levels on mine, and we're just all going to be very, 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 you know what? It's going to sound like we're professional. We'll fake them out. Okay, now that we have this and it's ready to go, we go File, Export Audio. And we're going to save this as an MP3. So I will give it a name. Whoops, let me back up. We have a specific naming scheme that we need you to use. It helps us to organize our files because, as you may imagine, we work with many, many files on our radio server. So we start by inserting the date. So the date is first the year, 2016. Then we do an underscore, not a dash, an underscore. Then we do the month, 11, underscore. Then we do the day. Now, if the day is 1 through 9, we have to have leading zeros. So we'll do a 03. So what we have is we actually have November 3rd, 2016. Underscore. Now we insert the author's name. Now, the author can either be a person. It could be, if it's Lance Earl doing the Lance Earl Show, I can just insert Lance Earl. We don't put spaces. We just have a capital letter to indicate the first and last name. Or we can, if you have a show, Vigilance, I could replace that because my show name is Vigilance, so I could do that. Underscore, and then the last thing is the title. So if in this episode I am interviewing Rep Joe Doe, then I would put that in .mp3. I make sure that I have this down here selected to MP3, and then I can click Save. Now it's going to ask for a couple of things. It is the artist name. The artist name is me, Lanceearl. The track title is Interview with Joe Doe. Whatever we name this episode, this track. And finally, the album is, I can create any number of albums I want. So in this case, I would say Vigilance. This other stuff, some of it gets inserted automatically based on the files that you bring in. We just kill all that. And we save. Okay, that wraps it up. This is how I produce audio for DallyPost Radio, and we encourage all of our content contributors to use the same basic standards so that we will all mesh together very nicely and produce a very professional and enjoyable product for our listeners.